Hello, and welcome back to the next session of frameworks. And here we will be mostly discussing about frameworks. And we have all the amazing people here. Session of frameworks. So we start with introducing each one of them, and maybe we can start with Jay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jay Xia. I'm working for Bestdance in Beijing, China. And I'm also an open source developer. And I'm the author of Alifjs. It is a full stack framework in Deno. Today, I'm very glad to share with you how to write React 8 amps in Deno.
Thank you for that introduction. Maybe Noor, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, my name is Nur. I'm a software developer at Columbia Road. I have been a software developer over 10 years now. I live in Finland. I'm Turkish and Libyan descent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hear your feedback about my talk. It's going to be about server-side rendering and statically generated pages. So yeah, talk to you soon. Fun fact about myself. Well, I love playing Magic the Gathering, so there you go.
Nice. Thank you for that. Krutie, do you want to go next?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much to React Finland for having me. It's absolute pleasure. So, as all of you know, my name is Krutie, and I work for Deloitte Australia. And I'm also Nuxt ambassador, so I get to work with the Nuxt core team, which is really exciting. And today we are going to talk about Nuxt basics and how you can implement a simple blog system using the Nuxt content module, which is our headless JIT-based CMS system module. So really looking forward to meet you all. And here's a little fun fact about me. I cut glass bottles. I hope you like it. Cool.
That's nice. Thank you. Thank you for all the amazing introductions. Thank you so much. So since this session is all about frameworks, quickly, do we want to jump on the question that what are frameworks according to you? And as we see, the front-end technologies are already booming, and there is always, some other framework coming every day, in fact. How do you see it as a transition for the front-end developers to adapt to these new technologies? Or maybe, do you think how is the future going to be? More like, maybe we can start with Noor.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, especially when you are talking about in the front-end ecosystem with the JavaScript ecosystem. There's like a new framework coming out every couple of minutes, it seems like it. There's a fatigue of following up what's going on. But I see it as like a growing pain. JavaScript is relatively speaking, as it's in current form, it's a very new language, and it's gonna be basically coming up with like brilliant ideas as we move forward to answer today's problems. And that's why we are coming up with libraries and frameworks all the time, and there's a huge ecosystem around it. And essentially, at some point, there will be winners who are the most used frameworks, who's going to be followed up, which is answering the majority of the need. So I see it as like a win-win situation, because as people see things differently, we are going to get good answers for different problems.
Thank you for that, Noor. Absolutely agree. Jay, do you want to go next? What do you think?
Yeah, currently, a lot of work is based on the Webpack, right? So Webpack is very powerful, but it is gave us a band development experience. So I'm thinking now browser, most of the modern browser is is supporting ES modules. So I think the ES modules maybe is the next stage we development web apps. For example, we can use skpank or ES dash input npm packs, no need bound. So we can write apps in the browser or text pand, no need bound. I think bound is pain for us. On the other hand, I think the tooling is growing. For example, the SWC at the ES build, they are written in other language. In standard is super fast. So this can give us many speed up in our development. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Krutie, do you want to add something to it?
Sure. So Nuxt.js and Vue.js is like the very first like frameworks that I have ever worked with. Because in the past, I come from like Adobe Flash time and ActionScript 2 and 3 time, right? So yeah, and after jQuery, I took on Vue.js and Nuxt. So what I like about what I like any framework to have, that it should be a little bit opinionated, but then also gives me freedom to customize and extend to tackle different requirements. And for example, only a few years ago, single page app was going to take over the world, right? But then the static generated site came along, and now that's everything. So Nuxt sort of tick all those boxes for me. So yeah, and it evolved with time. Like all the frameworks should evolve with time and the changing demand of the industry. So yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Moving on, I would first invite Jay to give his first demonstration on Alifjs, which I'm really excited about. So over to you, Jay.
Hi. Okay. So what is Alifjs? You can think Alifjs is a copy of NextJS, but it powered by modern tools, I would say. For example, it works on top of Deno, and we using SWC to transpile your code like TS, JSS to the browser, and finally we bound your AMP user yes build. As we know, SWC and yes build is super fast. So I think the most different between NextJS and Alfjs is that Alfjs don't need Webpack, since we don't bind your AMP. We just transpile your code to the browser on demand. So and finally we can sorry. So here you can see there is a benchmark about how fast SW is faster than TS default container. TS default container. Yeah. So so how to write a React component in Deno? Well, basically you don't need to change anything, and except you need to import the module receiving is different. For example, you in the Deno, you need to input the rand from the CDN like this. But this is not good because you need to write a lot of things in here. For example, you need the version something. So how to receive this? Okay, we have the input maps. What is input map? Input maps is a new draft of TC39, I think. It is define how browser loading your ES modules like this. Here is an example. This we define some lists about what we need to use, but we can have a list name, like we just React to run yes then dot the run then blah blah. So next in your code, you just need input you before we write React in npm. Okay, so how it works? Suppose you apps have 1,000 pages, right? So and before if you use the Webpack will bound for you, including the 1,000 TSX. It's very slow, but in Alifjs we don't bound generate development. So when you open a page, we just need to transpile the component files to the ES module.js. Then we render it to the HTML. This we call it SSR. So the browser just receive the HTML and the CGS, MGS file. So it's render. That's it. So that means even you have 1,000 or you have one page, the server both script time is same. And finally, we use is build to bound your JS, and you can put it on CDN like a version. Okay, so let me show you some demo. Oh. Here is a hello world page. You can say, oh, sorry, need to go to 18. Okay, here is a hello world example. You can say we have some file in the folder API, just like or some library was shared in the page. And public, this is same with Lfjs and style. So in the index page, we can it's a normal React components with a lot of things. After you start server, you can see the page, and the page will follow your change immediately. So we can React Finland. Yeah. Yeah. So there is some different special feature though in Alifjs. For example, there is a hooks. Is a hook name use Deno. What is use Deno? Use Deno means you can mix the Deno runtime in the component. So in the in the code bank, you can write a Deno. For example, here we show what Deno version is. Yeah. The other thing is we have JSX trick. We call it JS magic. Like here is a tag named head. In NextJS, in NextJS, you need to input a header component. But in Alifjs, you don't need to input anything. Just write the header, and the Alifjs will render it to here. Let's see, title, and you can input the CSS like before we import. Okay, I will show you the other example. This one is using 1D CSS to create a CSS files. You can say I open this page. Oh, oops. This is the card with a picture and the title and the description and a button. So, and all this style we write here like this, like typhoon wind. So you can change. For example, we want left center. Yeah. Okay. And say the position is changed, or we revert. So how it works? Here Alfjs have a plugin system. So here I write when the transpile plugin. You can say here I input here, just input this plugin in the plugins array. So you can say all the class name will be transformed to the CSS. Yeah. Okay. The other example I want to show you is this one. This one in 2. This one is same with first demo. It shows the hello world, but here I change something. For example, I use SWR, use this hooks. This is from NPM package, is by Versa13. So I can get the data from the API. The API is very simple, just return account. But the count is very different. We save the count in the local storage. I mean, local storage in Deno, and just like browser, you can use like this. So each time you refresh a page, you get the current account. So that means we can use the NPM ecosystem. Yeah. Okay. So like the example before, we can share UI library from NPM, and we have a built-in CSS support, and also you can write a plugin to extend the Alifjs runtime. For example, you can support Markdown page, Typhoon CSS, and we have a plan to creating some testing library for Alifjs. This is working in program. Okay. And finally, I want to talk a little about Deno and NextJS. Deno and NextJS both use the V8. So, but Deno is new that drops the band design in Node.js. That is rethinking. Sorry. And Deno is a kind of a browser, like and this we can use the local storage like browser. So this is very simple. Okay, and Deno cares about development experience. For example, it includes the linter and fermenter and bundler, even compile. Yeah. So you don't need a Webpack anymore or NPM. And the other thing Deno is great runtime for serverless, I think. For example, if you write an API on Cloudflare, so you don't need do the NPM install. You just input the dependency from the CDN. I think this is very nice. And Deno can share Loda's ecosystem, since we have Skpank and the ESM we can transfer NPM panks to Deno modules. Now it works fine, I think. Okay, this is my share. I'm sorry, my English speech is so bad. If you have questions, you can contact me Twitter or my GitHub. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade. That was an amazing talk. Absolutely. It is just amazing. So, yeah. I have few questions. Okay. So, I think Aleph already supports sort of file system routing and API routing out of the box. Could you also share some knowledge on that? Hi, Jay, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, maybe Krutie, do you want to add something? How do you think, or maybe Noor can add something, since I think Alifjs is more or less inspired from NextJS.
Yeah, it looks really cool, actually. Like one of the things that like it borrows a lot of ideas from Next.js, so that the header and whatever component, but it does it more natively, which is not required to using its own components. So that was nice. But for me, one of the nicest, interesting things that comes with Deno and import maps, actually, that was like really cool to see. For instance, you can define your sources in the import map and just import them in your components. The only question that I have to Jay is does the import maps work so that they do the sourcing already in advance, or is it only the source material is only downloaded when it is basically on runtime on the request?
Yes. We usually import maps, generally build compile your code. So we'll try to understand what real URL you want to input. So, but this is a trick because this is different with the standard import maps in browser. Because after this, we don't insert the input maps in the browser. We just order you are already behind in the Finland.js. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more question. How and where you can host Alifjs applications?
Okay. First, that's a good question. First one, we now support Verso. You can go to our website here, check out how to development. First one, you can just start your apps like NextJS starts to. The other way, you can build your apps to HTML and JS. It is totally static website. The other way is you can develop your apps in Verso.com now, including the API supporting. Yeah. And in the future, we have planned to support Deno deploy business, and maybe the other, I don't know.
Thank you for that answer. We have one more question. Is it possible to author completely static sites with Alifjs?
I don't understand what's sorry.
So
you mean SSG?
So sorry.
I can't understand the question. You mean SSG?
Yes, static site.
Yeah, Alfjs support SSG building. Yeah. You just need a command. I will show you. I can show you how it works. I close this. I close this here. So I can just run Alfjs build. There's some downloading, some. Wow. So this is the first time you need some modules is missing. So the second time you can fast is very fast build. And finally you can say in the text, you can say we have index.html. and we have the bounding code and the public files, including the logo, image, and page data. The page data include the use Deno hooks data, and I will show. I saved it, and I run your NPS server. So you can say this is same with this, but this is just in HTML. You can say the just is bounding for you, and it's very tiny. Finally, JS we have about 16. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Thank you for showing that. We have, I think, one quick question. So not sure if this was discussed, but how is performance when we are kind of using Alifjs?
Sorry?
How is performance compared to other frameworks or libraries that we use when we kind of use Alifjs? How do you see performance impacting?
Formers?
Mm-hmm.
Formers. What is formers? Sorry. For
performance?
Performance?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is, yeah. I love. Sorry.
No problem.
Performance, yeah. In the exam, you can say there is a performance bound JS. It's very tiny, yeah. But this is because we decided not to support IE browser. So basically means you need this performance just this performance is created by your settings. For example, you want to support ES 2015 or ES 2020. You need is perfect. Then we will including the version how to build this for you. But we don't support the ES file. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. One more question we have from Shirish. He's asking, does Lfjs support incremental build for SSG?
Yeah.
Okay.
For now, we don't, but we have plan. Yeah. Because this needs the server. If you use Alifjs style server, we can support this. But if you run it in Verso.com, you cannot use this. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for all your answers and for your amazing talk. Next, we move on to Noor, who will be showing us more about SSR and SSG in NextJS. I'm really excited for it. So over to you, Noor.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Noor Ketene. I am, as I said before, one of the developers at Columbia Road. We help companies get more revenue and more customers through digital sales solutions, such as e-commerce to enable growth. We use different methods depending on the challenge. In this scope, I'm going to be talking about removing the barriers as a customer through the customer journey. For each click that the user has to make, a company would be losing sales and therefore revenue. It's a friction, and as the time that you spend on the web page increases, the amount of the sales decreases. And so we need to remove the barriers. One of the barriers that we are seeking is basically how much time you spend on the website itself. For each click, for instance, that a user has to go to complete a purchase, the sales amount decreases in the same way. And at the same time, for each time that you spend longer waiting for a page to load, you lose customers as well. So I'm going to be going through, like, for example, how to remove the steps that you need to in order to save a page. For that, I'm going to be showing my demo. Let's get rid of this one. So yeah, here we have a post page. In this page, we are going to be first starting from a point of view of like a client rendering, client-side rendering. And we are going to be showing, I'm going to be showing, like, for instance, how you render the client-side application. So I'm just going to take some code here. In this way, we don't do anything, but let's do this. And here we have basically what we are doing is we want to show a title, a body of the post. And when we are not showing anything, it's just going to be showing loading. And we have a use effect here that has a function that fetches some from the API response, some post with its ID, and then basically set the loading false, and that's it, right? We have a dependency in ID. That's quite classic way of using, for example, in a React application. However, this means like every single time that you do this, the client, the browser, basically has to go to the server and fetch that data, and the user has to wait for the amount that it has to wait in order to get the data to be, the content to be shown. And every single time you do that, that means the client, the server side can basically throttle you. Another approach to go through this basically to reduce the amount of times that you are hitting from the client to the server, to increase the amount of time, decrease the amount of time you spend in bundling the page, is changing this page basically to a server-side rendered application, right? In order to do that, you can basically introduce something called, in NextJS, something called get server-side props. So let's do that together, right? We'll go through with you and let's see how we are going to be removing the client-side code and putting it all to the server side. First, we are going to use something called get server-side props that is like provided by NextJS. Server-side props, and that takes a context and export. That takes a context, and then we are going to get the ID from that context. Query x equal, right? And then we are going to use that to basically fetch data that we want to use. We are going to use the fetch API, and then we are just going to be taking this bit here. Let's get rid of second. And that's a GET request anyway, so we don't have to put anything else there. And then we are going to, let's say, cause await for request to resolve. And then we are going to be returning that information to our front end, right? So it can be used. Yeah. And then we want to return the post. Yeah. And here we are just going to be returning all of this client-side code. And yeah, we don't need that, and we don't need that either. And then we are going to return the post itself. Okay. So when you do this, let's see if everything looks fine. Wait a second, I forgot something, I guess. Does somebody see something that I'm missing here?
It's props.
Aha, thank you. Okay, yeah, and then we have to refresh the thingy in order to get the page running. And then we basically now changed our application to a server-side rendered application, which is cool. But we have still the same problem, even though that the client side now doesn't make the call to the server, to the API endpoint. We are still making the call from the server itself. So we are still to the API endpoint. So we are still making that call, although the number of calls we are making has reduced. So even though that has changed the number of times that you make the call and the amount of time that you spend in rendering the page, you are still making an extra step that you don't need to, because this page essentially doesn't change almost at all. It only changes for fixes or something like that, but the content, the post content itself stays the same. So I would like to change that information as well. But one thing that we can look at this point here is something called server-side generation or static site generation. So we want to basically, what we want to do here is generate the page on the server for the path that we know that exists, and then put that into our server. And so whenever the customer or user comes to the page, we don't actually make calls anymore to the API, but we are going to be just basically getting the page that is already been generated and showing to the user. So that shaves a lot of time from the user side. All right, let's change that information too. Now this prop here, the server side prop, is for rendering from server side. So I'm going to be introducing something new that's called get static paths. So essentially what we are going to be doing here is that I'm going to be saying, hey, do you know what? Get me the product paths, and then we are going to make pages out of those. So let's start with that one. Export. Paths, and that's also doesn't take an argument. And then we are going to do basically the same thing here. So let's just do that. But instead of fetching a single post here, what we are going to be doing is fetching all of the posts, okay? And then use that posts and and map through the posts and basically create pages or paths for our application or pages. Const paths equals to and paths will be basically post.map post, and then here we are going to be returning and return paths, params, and that's going to be the ID of the post that we want to build the page for. And that will be post.id. However, this is, it expects it to be a string, so let's turn it into a string to be sure. Am I missing something here? Yeah. Fine, that's better. And then we are going to be using this basically to return to our server the paths that we want to do, and then we can use another method called fallback true. Essentially, what this does is saying to if there is no resource in that path just fall back to something else. So you let your client, you give your client the opportunity to handle it later on if you want to make a call in the front end, for instance. And then we are going to be changing this bit. So instead of having get server side props, let's remove it so we have a better, see better function. We are going to use something called get static props. Okay, and that takes params, an argument, and then we are going to fetch ID from that params. Essentially, this is when the user comes to the server. On the server side, we are fetching the ID, and then we are going to use that ID and then get the product that we want. And then ID there. And then post, let's wait for it to resolve again, and then return it to our client side. And then we can, for example, at this point, like one of the things that we are expecting here, what could happen essentially is if the post has changed, we don't want the users to see the same post over and over again, even if it's edited. So what we want to do here is give an opportunity to change that, to revalidate. Actually, after a certain amount of time, we want this page to be a deprecated, and then a new page should be created on the fly. Okay. So here, okay, one more thing. Yeah, that wasn't going to work. Let's see, everything looks nice. All right. So let's save. This, of course, won't work in this sense because I'm just running it on runtime. But what we are going to be doing is essentially, I need to fix one more thing here.
So there's line 38. You want to check that one because it's post.json.
Sorry, what?
Line 38.
Line 38. Ah,
Nice 40. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't see stuff. Yeah, that looks better. If there's no post for some reason, don't do anything. Return an empty fragment here. All right. So we are going to be basically run build. So now we are going to be building our app. Let's see if it works. All right, so it looks like it works fine. You can see here, for example, it has created like the paths for 97 or like 100 pages, and we can see all of those pages. Let's see, where was it? In Next, I think it was server pages, posts. So you can see here all of the pages that has generated through, right? So we have every pages in our server at this point. So we can say npm start, and then it started it. So if you go to the page, you basically load it from the server side. And if you go to any other page, like it will be still getting it from the server side. But of course, one of the things that is problematic here is that what if you have thousands and thousands of pages? You can't just simply wait for the build time to compile all of the pages forever. So as Jay suggested earlier, like you can use, for example, a way to fetch the most popular products. Here, let's say, I'm just going to be hard coding it for now, and return an array with some pages, let's say. Return params items. Let's say that I want to have the first 3 pages. 3 and 2, and those needs to be strings again. And then let's put those. And let's get rid of our next here. Let's see. What's trash? Okay, so let's try to build this again. And let's go to the posts page. So, yeah, or actually, yeah. So, okay, run build. So let's build the pages that we want to. So it's still building. Okay, so in here you can, oh, am I making some mistake here? For some reason, I need to do this. Yeah, that makes more sense. All right, we don't need this either, actually. Let's try again. All right, and then run the build. All right, so now if we go, for instance, to the pages, yeah, it's basically, why it's keeping on building all of the 100 pages all the time. Yeah, for some reason it's building the 100 pages, even though I don't want it to. Not the trash, yes. Yeah. Okay, now I guess I forgot to save. So we have the 3 pages here, and then if we go to the server and pages, you can have only posts. We have only the 3 pages here generated for us, right? So if we go npm start and go to 84, for instance, now we have the page and it's generated and put to our server as well. So next time a user comes to this page, they will get the page from statically served from the server instead of trying to fetch the information from the API. And if you go to the posts, for instance, this is served from the server side, and one of the things, of course, the browser does is prefetch the pages, so it basically generates a bunch of pages when you do that too, when you go to the post endpoint. But yeah. Yeah, so that was the presentation that I had for you guys. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to listen to you.
Thank you so much. That was really an amazing talk. Thank you so much, Noor.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have some questions. We have some comments. I love the collaborative debugging that's going on. So that's great. Let me quickly ask some questions. So there is an RFC that I read on NextJS that NextJS is also kind of coming with ISR. Would you?
Sorry, can you ask the question again? I was reading a comment a second ago.
No problem. So there is an RFC that I read that NextJS is sort of also working on incremental regeneration. So would you like to share something on that?
Yeah, like I was just showing, for example, here, that's when like you can basically go ahead and share, like generate only a subset of pages that you want to. Like I was just, for example, generating the first 3 pages of the thing. Like you can, of course, now of course it was hard-coded, but for instance, you can do it by having an endpoint that say that give me the most popular post that you have or products that you have, and I will generate those pages. And every single time a new user comes in, you can say to them that, hey, like this user is going to fetch this obscure product or post that hasn't been read for the last, like, I don't know, 5 years. So you generate that for that user and then save it in the server for a set amount of time. And that would be served every single time a new user comes in without overloading the build time.
Just quickly, a follow-up question on that. How do you really do that under the hood?
What's the question exactly here? Like, what do you mean, like, under the hood?
How do you recognize that, these are the pages that we need to read?
It's a difficult question to answer, right? Like, that has to be an answer comes from a business side, essentially. Like, you have to define what is important for the business. Like, do they have a campaign where they want to show products to the users or to their customers like very, very fast, or do they want to have at other times pages that is let's say the most sold pages, and for instance, at that point when a page isn't like loaded really fast, you lose customers. Like, if you have shoes that is like a specific brand that sells all the time versus a shoe that you came up during the campaign or a new product that you want to showcase, and you have to anticipate what's going to be bringing the most of the load there too in advance, in a way. Like, for example, if you have a campaign, you might anticipate that a certain type of product is going to get a lot of visits. For example, if we have these crazy days here in Finland where people go to like buy a lot of stuff in a discount. So if you know those products are going to get a lot of visits, you want to basically generate those in advance versus the other products that doesn't have any essentially importance for that moment in time. So it's more of a question of like, how do you decide what products or posts or pages are important?
That answers my question. Do Krutie or Jay, do you have any questions or? No? Okay, cool. I have one last question. So like you said, like, you're already working on SSR, and SSG as well. When would you recommend someone to sort of, actually decide to use Next.js over, already using some other frameworks?
That's a very good question. Frameworks and tools and whatever, all of those has to be chosen based on the business's needs, not our needs or our wants. Like, I love Next.js, it's like really cool to use, but if it doesn't fit to the business need, it doesn't make any sense to use it, for instance, like just to make like fulfill my ego, essentially. How do you choose what to choose? What makes sense for a business, essentially? That's a difficult question to answer as well. It's a good question too. Like, I answered that question based on like a few factors. One is, for instance, what's the team is like that is going to be working on a certain thing. Do they have the capabilities or not? Do they have a certain strength in some technology or not? That's pretty much answers part of the question. Another part is basically what about like the technical capabilities, the customer types, what kind of things that you want to show, what kind of interactions that users have. So all of those questions play essentially a part. How do you choose between server-side rendering or statically generated pages? Like, for instance, I would always recommend, if a content rarely changes or very like it's not very frequent that the content changes for a page and in advance what it's going to be, I would very much definitely recommend you to use statically generated pages for that purpose. And but if for example, a page might be changing quite often, then it might be a good idea to use server-side rendering. And the client-side rendering I would recommend, for instance, using, if there's an interactive element, like, for example, a cart functionality, you want to basically, when you are adding a cart, you want to use a client-side rendering for that, or client-side actions. On the other hand, when you are showing the shopping cart itself, you want to, at least for the first load, you want to use the server-side rendering to make things a little bit easier for the customers as well and yourself. But yeah.
That answers my question. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we have. Do you have any tips for larger organization who are willing to migrate to Next.js?
Yeah, sure. Like we had one project, like there are a couple of ways of doing that. Like, for example, if you are a large organization and you have a big application, a legacy application, and you are in the middle of thinking of changing this application, going through a change, and your technical leads are clear and you know that you are going to go to Next.js, you can do that both ways. One way is basically do it incrementally and make the new and old basically live together and just basically share pages. And then essentially at some point, the new pages or the new site will replace altogether the old site and the functionality, and the users won't lose any functionality in that way. That's one way of going at it. There's a lot of pain involved in doing that. But like it depends on what the business need is, essentially. And the other one is basically do work so that you replicate, not necessarily replicate, but come up with a new product that is going to replace the old one. It doesn't have to be a replicate of it. You have learned a lot of lessons from the old tool, the old website, and you know what to carry on and you know what not to carry on at that point. And you know what the business needs are, or at least some people know what they might want to have. And then you can follow that, and then you come up with a new product essentially at some point, and release that and basically set the sun for the other one. That's another one going at it. But yeah, it depends on the company size, organization structure, team capabilities. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all the amazing answers and your amazing talk. It was really insightful.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to our next demo, and it is a brief introduction about Nuxt. So I would be really curious to know, because I've never used Nuxt, so it's a new topic for me. And over to you, Krutie. So we have Krutie Patel, who will be giving a brief introduction to Nuxt. She's also an ambassador of Nuxt. So yes, over to you, Krutie. Thank you for.
Hi, I'm Krutie. I'm a senior front-end consultant and a Nuxt ambassador. And today we are going to learn about Nuxt.js. Similar to Next.js for React, Nuxt.js is an SSR framework for Vue.js. But we can also build static sites and single-page apps using Nuxt. And best way to get started with Nuxt is to go through its documentation here. But you don't have to know everything about Vue.js to pick up Nuxt, because you can always learn Vue concepts on a way to your Nuxt learning journey. So let's jump right in and create one Nuxt app from scratch using create Nuxt app command. So I will go to our terminal and create Nuxt app, my Nuxt app. Running this command will ask you a series of questions such as project name, programming language, package manager, and for the UI framework, we will go with the Bootstrap view. And for the Nuxt.js module, we will go with the content module because it is our Git-based headless CMS. And for linting tool, let's go with the prettier, testing framework none, and rendering mode. Now we will here go with the universal because it supports both server-side rendering and static site generation. So we are interested in the static site generation. So let's go with the universal. For deployment target, we have two options, either server or static. So because we are building a static site, I'll go with static. We are not using TypeScript, so let's go with the jsconfig.json and ci none and git. Now, because we have selected Bootstrap View and our Nuxt content module, they will be pre-configured for our Nuxt app. Perfect. Let's cd in to our Nuxt app and open it in the VS Code. So the first thing I would recommend you check out the Nuxt config file of this Nuxt project before you start anything, because Nuxt config is the blueprint of your Nuxt project, and here you will find the deployment target, your meta tags including your global CSS plugins and modules. So as we can see that Bootstrap View and the Nuxt content are already added here. Also, the components is set to true. So what this means is that Nuxt will auto-import any View component found in this component folder here. So we don't have to write a separate import statement to use any of these View components. Now that we know what's in our Nuxt config file, the second thing I recommend you do is familiarize yourself with the directory structure, because at the heart of Nuxt, we have this file-based routing system, right? That means any View file we create in the pages directory will become your web page. And surrounding this file-based routing system, Nuxt offers custom features like plugins, modules, server middleware, and more to help us extend and customize Nuxt as per the requirement. Let's go ahead and do yarn dev so that we can see what we are rendering on the home page. So at the moment, we are rendering this tutorial View component on the home page. So let's go on localhost 3000 and we should see the tutorial component there. Perfect. Now let's see what we have in this content folder. So this content folder is not the default folder of Next.js, but it's here because we selected Nuxt content module, and that's why it came pre-configured for us. And we can see that we have a sample Markdown file here. So let's try to render this Markdown on our home page instead of our tutorial component. All right, so let's begin with a special lifecycle hook of Nuxt called async data. So async data, which receives first argument as the context. And we will create one variable for our hello page. And we will fetch the content from our content folder. So as soon as we use this instance $content, Nuxt content module knows where to look for that file. So let's simply provide our name of the Markdown file, followed by fetch, and let's return our hello page variable. So as soon as we return something from the async data, it's then available for us to use in the template area. So let's add some basic markup. We can simply print hello page, and let's see what do we have. So we can see that the entire Markdown is printed here. Now let's pre-tag this hello page so we can clearly see what information do we have. So for example, we have slug, we have description, we have title, table of content, body, and we will also have access to the created date, modified date, etc. So this is all possible because we are using Nuxt content module. Nuxt content module provides us this helper component called Nuxt content, which accepts document as a prop. So if we were to pass our hello page to this document prop, then it would nicely format the content for us. Let's take a look at our hello.markdown. So this file has simply title, description, and the regular content, right? So with Nuxt content module, it provides this amazing feature to live edit your content. So when we are in the localhost 3000, we can simply double click on the content and it will become editable. So let's update the title. So fetching 101 and displaying 101, and then I would click outside and we can see that it has updated our hello.md in our VS Code as well. So this feature could be very useful if you are building a blog using a Nuxt content module. Now let's quickly go back to our index.view and talk about why async data worked. So async data worked for us here because it provides us Nuxt context, special instance of $content method in Nuxt context, which eventually helps us fetch any files like Markdown, YAML, XML, or even CSV that is located in the content folder. So I would recommend you check out this Nuxt lifecycle hook diagram, which will tell you more about other lifecycle hooks we have, such as Nuxt server init, route middleware, validate, async data, and so on, and how they can help you achieve different things. Also, each and every Nuxt lifecycle hooks, they receive Nuxt context. It is worth understanding what other keys are available to us when we work with the route components. So here we can see that these are the keys available for us, some on the client side, some only on the server side, from the Nuxt context. Also, you won't see $content instance here, because this $content is not available by default. The only reason we can access it from the context is because we are using Nuxt content module. I hope you are not confused by that. Next, we will try to access multiple Markdown files, right? Currently, we've been working with simply hello.markdown. Instead, I have added 5 Markdown files in a slides folder. So now let's try to access all of this Markdown on our homepage. So we will go back into our async data hook where we can write const slides. Now the entire fetch call will remain the same, except for we won't be providing a single Markdown file name. Instead, we will provide name of the folders so that it can return an array of Markdown files for us, right? So now we will simply return slides, and if we print slides.length, it should give us total length of slides, which is 5. Now, because slides is an array, let's loop through each and every slide. So for that, we will use v4 directive, where we can go slide in slides. And in here, we will print individual slide. So now if we see, we should have 5 bullet points. So that means that's working. Now to see it a little better, let's pre-tag it. So we can see the exact same detail we saw earlier. So we have slug, description, title, body, etc. So now when I click on one of the slides, I want to go to the detail page of that slide. So I would simply use the slug, and also we will be using Nuxt link component, which will help you navigate around your Nuxt site. So this is the default component that comes with Nuxt, which accepts 2 as a prop, where we can simply pass in slide.slug. Right? And here we are getting a red squiggly because it's looking for a unique key, which in our case would be slide.slug, because it will always be unique. So now we don't have to see the entire object. So let's go slide.title, and that should create a 5 link for us, which will take us to their individual slide detail page. So currently it's not working because we don't have any dynamic route set up. So let's create one dynamic page. So we create new file, and in Nuxt we use underscore in front of your parameter name to create the dynamic page. So it could be _name.view, or it could be _id. In our case, we will go with _slug. So here, so on the detail page, again, we can use the same async data hook, async data, which receives Nuxt context, but we can also destructure the content directly like that. And we will create another variable called slide, and then we would do await content. And in this case, the first argument is of course the name of the folder where you want to fetch your individual slide from, and the second argument will be your parameter, as in we need to indicate and let Nuxt content know that out of these 5, which Markdown file we are trying to fetch. So currently it's appearing in our parameter here. So in this case it's 1. Now to access the parameter in async data, we can use another special Nuxt context key called params. So if we take a look at our Nuxt context diagram, we can see that params is one of the key that's available to us, so which is a short for route.param. So we would go back, add params, and as the second argument, we will add params.slug. So that's how we can fetch the individual slide. And now simply return it, and it should be available for us to use in the template area. So let's add some bootstrap markup. And here we can print our slide. So now if we go to any individual slide, we can see its Markdown content on the screen, right? So here again, we can use our helper component called Nuxt content, which takes document prop, and we pass in our slide Markdown content into it, so that our content is nicely formatted there. Now we can check other slides and we can see that it's printing just fine. It's not ideal to go from one slide to another using the parameters, right? But Nuxt content module is smart enough to provide us with a method that can fetch us the previous and the next slide depending on the existing one that's open, right? So how do we do that? We can begin with await and $content. The first argument we always have to provide is the name of the folder, because we are dealing with the multiple Markdown files located in a single folder. And after that, Nuxt content module provides us a very handy set of chainable function. So one of them is called surround. So we're going to write surround, which accepts the active or the current parameter.slug, indicating that we want to fetch one slide before this current item and the one after. So we will just follow it up by fetch. What it returns is the array with the 2 items. So we can simply destructure it, say const first item and the second item. Right? So essentially this first item is your previous slide and this second item is your next slide. And we can simply return them so that they are available for us in the template area. And after that, we will again use the Nuxt link component so that we can navigate between the back and the next slide, right? So under the 2, we're gonna provide previous.slug, right? So what we have in this previous object is the entire signature of your Markdown. So we will get slug, title, description, everything. But for our Nuxt link to work, we will use our previous.slug that will make our dynamic page work as it should. So we're going to say previous. Now what will happen when we are on the first slide is that we may not have the previous slide in that instance. So let's add a condition that only when the previous item is returned, print previous. Otherwise, for the next next.slug and next. Let's save and test. So we can see that we have next button and next and the previous button. Before we end, I would like to take you through this visual for Nuxt content module, and you can follow the colors to see that there are 3 parts to the Nuxt content module. The way you write your content. You can write your content in YAML, CSV, JSON, XML, etc. And then there are ways you can fetch your content. So here are the further chainable methods that we have available when we fetch the data from our content folder. And finally, the way you display your content. So that's the 3rd part of this Nuxt content module that you can check it out here. And also we have the Nuxt content documentation, which I recommend you read through once. It will give you further details about how you can use the content module. And finally, you can check out my website, krutiepatel.com, which is built using Nuxt and the content module that we just saw. Here you will find my Twitter, Medium, GitHub, so you can reach out to me if you have any further question for Nuxt or the content module. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krutie. That was an amazing talk. And I actually got a lot of new insights, which I didn't know about Nuxt. So that was an amazing talk. Thank you for that.
Cool. Thank you.
Let's see if we have some questions. If not, I have some questions.
I don't have a question, but I will love you. You just show when in the browser you add the Markdown content, then it changes in the editor. I think this is very amazing. I love it.
Live editing, yes. We were really excited for that feature. Even when we saw it for the first time, we were like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Any questions, Noor or Jay, you want to ask Krutie?
I don't have so much question, but it's like really nice to see Next.js. Like I have a little bit of experience before, and then I love that it's like quite similar to Next.js in many ways. So it was like really fun to watch how she was going through the stuff that she was going through.
It was hard to decide what to keep and what to remove, because I want to say so much. But yeah. I'm always available if anyone wants to learn more about Nuxt. Also, since we are here and I'm a Nuxt ambassador, so I'm going to say this, that we have our very first Nuxt Nation conference happening, which is free event. So any one of you can attend. It's on 15 and 16 September. So yeah, you will get to hear the talk from the authors. So yeah. Cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Please join. If you can send a link, that will be really helpful.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. I quickly have one question. What would you say when somebody wants to sort of migrate from some other framework to Nuxt? What are the challenges?
I think I would follow it up by what Noor said. Of course, we need to see the capability that in the team who is well-versed with Nuxt. But then again, I would say that if someone is coming from Next.js, I think there's so much we can relate because I think Nuxt was introduced after Next.js was released. So yeah. And another thing that I would recommend is to review the content of your current website that you're trying to migrate, because in Nuxt we have a hybrid mode as well. So you can pick up a set of routes which you don't want to statically generate it. So you can have this small SPA going on in your static website. So because static websites is all the rage these days. So in it, if you have a booking feature or the e-commerce shopping cart feature, you can completely remove those routes from being statically generated and make sure that they are they can act as a single page app. So that's always a good idea. But yeah, other than even with the Nuxt, you have all three options. You can do server rendering, you can do single page, and also you can do the static generation. So all the options are there.
Cool. I think I'll go with the last question and that's it. How do you really manage state in Nuxt?
So we do have, can I share something quickly?
Yeah, that would be great, yeah.
Right. All right, so I'm going to quickly go to sorry. Let's go to diagram.
Just share and share screen.
Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh.
Just click on the share button and then maybe it'll ask you for an option.
Right. It was 2-click process. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now?
Yep. Now we can see it.
Perfect. So sorry, wrong diagram. The slide that I wanted to show was the directory structure. All right, we are back on track. So here we can see we have this folder called store, which is completely optional in Nuxt directory, only when you have a Vuex store, which I think it's as similar as we have Redux in React. So for Vue, we have Vuex, which is our state management. And as soon as you create this store folder with your index.js, and believe me, it could be empty, and the Vuex store will be activated in your Nuxt project. So same goes for module, server, middleware, plugins, all these options. All these folders are optional, but you can use them to like customize your Nuxt further than the default, which is your like least minimum required folder is the page component. But yeah, you can add your store, Vuex store as well in it. It's as simple as creating a store and a store folder and your index.js file in it.
Thank you.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so I think we will move on to the key takeaways from each one of your talk. And we can start with maybe Krutie. What do you want to
I think for Jay's talk, I have to say I really liked it. I learned about Deno, so which was amazing, and I'm really looking forward to find more details about the serverless with the Deno and how it compares with the Cloudflare. So that was amazing. That's something new I learned. And of course, with the NextJS, it was a good demo for me, especially because I'm learning React at the moment. So, and I'm slowly want to move to the NextJS so I can really compare the two. So yeah, really helpful.
maybe
Thank you.
Yeah, Jay, go on. You can go next, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what, but for me, Deno and Alifjs still is not, not stable, or people don't want to try it. Because they people think the ecosystem is different, but it's not. We can use a Node.js ecosystem in Deno. Yeah, like you can use the CKPank, CDN, and the ES.sash. This is creating our team. Yeah. So I hope more people can now Deno, and you can write your web apps in Deno. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Noor, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for all the speakers. By the way, they had amazing speeches and presentations. Like for me, it's so exciting to see the Deno's evolution. It's getting more and more adopted by the community, and it's like really nice to see. Especially the imports, like the import maps are becoming more ubiquitous in starting to become more ubiquitous in the front end. So it's nice to see that too. Like recently, Ruby on Rails has introduced that as well for their front end, the import maps, instead of like using the bundles and webpacks and stuff like that. So that's really exciting to see. From NextJS, as I said, like I had experience with it beforehand, so it was really nice to see it more in depth, in a sense. It's something that's like I'm also interested in getting into it, because it has a lot of value. It has a lot of opinionated ways of thinking on how to handle some of the business problems. So it's definitely something that I'm watching out, like how it's going to be evolving, and it's in the same comparable level with NextJS. So it's like really nice to see it. So thanks for both of the talks.
Thank you, everyone, for an amazing talk. I mean, this session was a lot of learning for me, so thank you. And yeah, so with this, we wrap up the session. And thank you, everyone, for your talks. And if you have any questions, please reach out to them individually.